What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Sayushi, and today we're going to be talking about the new 5-star character that was announced, which is Nilo. You've probably already seen her in-game if you ended up doing any of the Sumeru storyline and so on and so forth. She's going to end up being a dancing 5-star sword wielder that uses the Hydro element. Now, before we get started, if those of you that just want the information, you can take it and get out if you want to. There is the Ascension card. There's going to be a link in the description where you can download it if you don't want to just end up taking a quick screenshot of your screen or whatever, but generally speaking, there is going to end up being the 3.1 update for Genshin Impact September 28th, and on that first phase of banners, we're going to end up having Cyno and Candace and a Venti rerun, and then we should have in either 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks from the 28th should be when Nilo's banner is in the game, and she's going to be alongside a rerun of Albedo. Now, one thing I gotta let you guys know just very quickly is that we are getting very, very close to the 2-year anniversary of Genshin Impact, and what they ended up doing for the first year is they reset the Genesis Crystal double top-up, and so I would assume that they're going to end up doing the same thing. So you might want to end up saving your money if you are, willing to drop down some money, because essentially you can end up dropping down, $20 and getting twice as much Genesis Crystals out of that. So, it saves you money in the long run, right? So the other things that we gotta mention is, of course, her World Boss Mats, which is going to end up being from a new enemy that is going to be located in the desert, which is going to end up being this guy right here, which looks pretty much the exact same as the mechs that you find out in Sumeru right now. But trust me, this guy is looking pretty solid. He's looking pretty devastating. He's got a lot more attack animations and so on and so forth. And I'm assuming he's going to be a lot bigger, right? But he's going to end up being one of the new enemies, which looks really, really cool. Anyways, let's move on to her elemental skill ability, which has a very, very lengthy description. Oh my dear lord. So, Dance of Haft Karsvar? We're just gonna call it the Dancing E or something. So it enters a pirouette state, which deals hydro damage to nearby opponents based on Nilo's max HP. So she is going to end up actually being a DPS character as far as I know, but we'll keep going through this. So while she is in the pirouette state, Nilo's normal attacks and elemental attacks will cause her to enter the sword stance and whirling steps stances respectively, which causes damage she deals to be converted into hydro damage that cannot be overridden. That is considered elemental skill damage. So in these stances, Nilo's third dance step will end pirouette and has the following effects. The sword dance unleashes a luminous illusion that deals hydro damage to opponents it touches and grants Nilo the lunar prayer effect. So many effects stack on this character, it's unreal. This effect converts Nilo's normal attacks into sword dance techniques, and her final hit will unleash a luminous illusion. Whirling steps. Nilo unleashes a whirling water wheel that deals area of effect hydro damage and creates a tranquility aura that follows your active character around and applies wet to opponents within its area of effect, which means that you could pop that off and then swap to another character, which is pretty nuts. Nilo is unable to perform charged attacks when under the effect of pirouette or lunar prayer. These effects will be removed once she leaves the field or exits any of these states. So a very, very weird, overly complicated E ability that I think in game it's going to end up having a much simpler functionality than the description has for it, because my god, basically it seems like you tap her E and you end up going into these different stances, right? Her ultimate abilities description is quite small in comparison. So distant dreams, listening spring. So it begins the dance of faraway dreams and springs that hear, causing a lotus of distant waters to bloom, dealing area of effect hydro damage based on Nilo's max HP and applying the lingering Aeon effect to all opponents hit. After an interval, opponents affected by lingering Aeon will take additional hydro damage. So I guess basically it's just going to tag all the enemies that are around this beautiful thing. And then those enemies are going to just after a time have kind of a bomb go off, similar to Eula's ultimate ability, except they're tagged by it, so I guess it's more like Child. Moving on to her passive abilities. So when perfect cooking is achieved on food with adventure related effects, there's a 12% chance of obtaining double of the product. Then there is Court of Dancing Petals, which has another super lengthy description. They've seriously got to work on these, dude. I hope in game it's not this bad. So when all characters in the party are either Dendro or Hydro, or at least one Dendro character and one Hydro character are in the party, the third dance step of her E ability will grant all nearby characters the Golden Chalice's bounty for 30 seconds upon the completion of the dance. Characters under the effect of the Golden Chalice's bounty will increase the elemental mastery of all characters by 60 for 10 seconds whenever they are hit by Dendro attacks. Also, triggering the Bloom reaction will create bountiful cores instead of Dendro cores. Such cores will burst very quickly after being created, and they have larger area of effects. Bountiful cores cannot trigger Hyper Bloom or Burgeon, which are two of the different reactions, and they share an upper numerical limit with Dendro cores. Bountiful cores damage is considered damage dealt by Dendro cores produced by Bloom, and should the party not meet the conditions for this passive talent, any existing Golden Chalice's bounty effects will be cancelled. Dear Lord MiHoYo, do your job and explain this better. I'm really hoping that Honey Impact just has like a terrible translation of this ability, dude, because that is a lot of words for an effect that is otherwise quite simple. Anyways, then there's going to end up being her other ability, or her other passive, which is each 1,000 points of Nilo's HP above 30,000 will cause the damage dealt by bountiful cores created by the characters affected by the Golden Chalice. It will increase by 7%. The maximum increase of bountiful core damage that can be achieved in this way is 300%. That would be a heck of a lot of HP that you would have to have on Nilo, but my god, that would slap, dude. Now moving on to her constellation. So her C1 makes it so that her E will be enhanced as follows. The Luminous Illusion damage is increased by 65%, and the Tranquility Aura duration is extended by 6%. Her C2 makes it so that after characters affected by the Golden Chalice's bounty deal Hydro damage to opponents, that opponent's Hydro resistance will be decreased by 35% for 10 seconds. Sounds an awful lot similar to Raiden's constellations. After triggering Bloom reaction deals damage to opponents, their Dendro resistance will be decreased by 35% for 10 seconds. So basically the reversal of it, which is absolutely nuts. You need to have unlocked her passive talent in order for this to happen. Her C3, of course, is going to end up increasing her ultimate damage, or ultimate level, sorry, which in tandem is going to increase the damage. And then her C4 makes it so that after the third dance step of her E ability hits opponents, Nilo gains 15 elemental energy, and damage for her Dance of Distant Dreams, which is her ultimate Listening Spring, will be increased by 50% for 8 seconds. Good lord. Her C5, of course, makes it so that her E ability gains 3 levels, and her C6, check this out, for every 1,000 points of max HP, Nilo's crit rate and crit damage will increase by 0.6% and 1.2% respectively. The maximum increase to crit rate and crit damage is 30% and 60%. This character is basically just constellations equals higher damage value, which to me personally is one of my least favorite types of constellations. I like constellations that change gameplay in meaningful ways, and I'm not necessarily saying that higher damage isn't scaling the character in meaningful ways, but more so I'm just saying that higher damage numbers doesn't really excite me as much as extended duration of abilities, or just being able to change up how I would actually use this character on the field. You know what I mean? So while there is quite a few new weapons coming into the game in version 3.1 that I can see right now, generally speaking, the only sword that is dedicated for her specifically, because there's already swords in the game that are going to complement her very well, just because she's going to basically be a damage character, but there is going to end up being the new 5-star weapon, which is going to end up having the substat of HP, and then the weapon affix is going to end up being as follows. So HP increased by 20%. When an elemental skill hits opponents, you gain the Grandheim effect for 20 seconds. This effect increases the equipping character's elemental mastery by 0.12% of their max HP. This effect can trigger once every 0.3 seconds with a max stack of 3, and when this effect gains 3 stacks, or when the third stack's duration is refreshed, the elemental mastery of all party members will be increased by 0.2% of the equipped character's HP for 20 seconds. My god, these descriptions are just so crazy. As far as what I have in game right now, I think Mist Splitter would end up working very well on her. Freedom Sworn maybe. Generally speaking, this sword kind of sucks. I would know. I got it with my Kazuha, and it just was terrible and weaker than pretty much anything I threw on him. And then I got Mistsplitter, and it's just way better. Generally speaking, that would probably be it, other than I guess you could use Festering Desire, or you would probably end up using the Black Sword just because of the crit rate, as well as the sub ability. The passive ability is really, really nice on this one. There is going to end up being the other crit damage sword that you can end up getting your hands on, which I just don't have, but that's the one that shows up in the shop sometimes. So moving on to the artifact sets, you know, take what I'm using with a grain of salt. Generally speaking, as far as the stats are concerned, you would basically have crit damage, crit rate, attack, and probably HP, just because of how much she scales off of it. I'd recommend probably using a Heart of Depth artifact set just because of the hydro damage, and then the 4-piece set is after using an elemental skill, it'll increase normal and charge attacks by 30%, which is pretty good because you're going to be using her skill a lot to constantly change her stances and so on and so forth. But I mean, there's probably going to be other artifact sets that'll end up working on her a little bit better. Maybe even you could end up using a burst build on her or so on and so forth. But the stats that you're going to primarily be focusing on is, as I mentioned, pretty much the exact same you see here, except instead of defense, you would want to have HP as a priority stat. Instead of having an attack percentage sans, you probably want to end up having your hands on an HP one. And then the goblet is going to end up being hydro damage, and then the hat is going to either be crit damage or crit rate, one or the other. Frankly speaking, it's, you know, beggars can't be choosers when it comes to the artifact sets. But generally speaking, Nylo seems to be very friendly to existing sets that you already have. I don't know whether or not we're going to get new artifact sets in the desert. I don't think we're getting them in 3.1, but maybe we'll get them in 3.2. We'll just have to wait and see with that. As far as her talents are concerned, I don't know how I would level her, frankly speaking. I guess I would probably just go for an all-around setup. Generally speaking, it seems like her E is going to be where a lot of her primary damage comes from, but for me personally, I would probably be building her around her burst, just because of how cool it is, one, and then how the fact that it's going to end up constantly tagging enemies and giving me something to react off of. That's my 2 cents towards it anyways. But you know, I'm not gonna act like I'm super interested in this character. I haven't really put in too much research into how you would end up building her up perfectly. I'm just giving you guys quick examples and so on and so forth. But anyways, I hope you ended up enjoying today's video. And if you did, smash like, sub for more, buy the merch, you want to support the channel. Oh, hi, Mark. And have yourselves a wonderful day, everybody.